if I had to ask you, what is your one hope for the children of India in terms of education?
So I think this is highly affordable. When you're testing an entire grade, testing once a year or maximum twice a year is good enough. It's not like every teacher has to be like the best teacher we had in our school. All we need is every teacher to be 1% better tomorrow.
You called out, there's a lot of data that indicators which is available because of technology. How much data is enough data? How much data is too much data? And what's the frequency of assessments that, is there an ideal number A? And if not, then how do we approach the frequency of assessments?
Sure. I mean, see, there are two ends of the spectrum. You have PISA, which is once in 3 years, right? And we have something like MindSpark where children are doing about 300 questions per day. Yeah. So let's say those are two ends of the spectrum. I think in a lot of this, Abhijat, it's the purpose, right?
Yes.
Why are you measuring what you're measuring and how will you use those data that's coming out of it? That's a far more important question on that. But let me give you the entire spectrum. So a PISA is a test of 15-year-olds, in language, math, science. The idea is to create competitive benchmarking. As Andreas Schleicher would say, that the role of benchmarking is to give a sense of the possibilities that exist. Otherwise, India was very happy saying its education was great and Tamil Nadu and Himachal are some of our best states until we stood second last in the world. So the benchmarking tells us that it is possible to scale. For a country like China, which has more students than India, if they can be in the top 20 and Shanghai can be number 1, India has no excuse for scale as the reason why our learning levels are low. So that's the purpose of benchmarking. In that context, a PISA once every 3 years is good enough frequency. The Indian government has been trying to do the National Achievement Survey, NAS, about once a year. We do the ASSET about once a year. These are a test of full grade length syllabus. For example, 3rd standard maths, 5th standard science. When you're testing an entire grade, testing once a year or maximum twice a year is good enough. You don't need more. We have a product called EI Cares, which is a monthly assessment. So let's say as a teacher, and you were a teacher, you were finishing electricity and magnetism on 10 days from now. You can just go into the system, order a test. We make a test for your textbook based on the number of questions, the time that you've given. We come and administer it, and we give you results before you reach home. Now, as a teacher, you've just finished teaching a topic. You've got to know what your students have understood. What are the questions majority have not understood? Who are the students who have not understood the critical questions? Yeah. If I can provide you this data in the evening and you can lesson plan for tomorrow, that's just-in-time assessment for you to remediate the gaps before you go to force and the next topic. So in that scenario, a monthly assessment is actually pretty helpful. There are cases where people are doing weekly assessments, and then there are these daily assessments as learning that we sort of see. So that's the extent that I see. I think what technology does is it helps you increase the frequency. It also gives you more layers to the data. So I'll tell you EI's example. For the first 20 years, we were assessing, and like Pratham Zasar, we would be able to say 46% of grade 4 students cannot do multiplication, right? That's the extent, because all I was measuring was whether the child got it or not. Yeah. But 3 years ago, I actually built a multiplication grid where I was able to track every child's keystroke, what number they wrote, how much time they took, what they deleted, would they put left to right or right to left first, and all of those things. Today, I can give you 7 distinct ways that a child got 27 into 17 wrong with frequency distribution of the error. So what data I've generated is the pattern of the mistake the student is making so that I can actually remediate better. And to the diagnostics being sharper gives you a better sort of remediation tool is useful. So frequency can range from daily to once in 3 years. The data that you generate has to be purposeful for the next iteration. And questioning the purpose of every assessment is a great place to start.
Okay. But can I assume that we can do this for all children in India? Like, is scale an element that will sort of push this out of equation in any manner?
If you have a need to do it at scale, so let me paint you what Gujarat government did with Gunotsav, where they had every student sort of test, and they had every class 1 and 2 and IS services officer also spend 3 full days at a school doing the assessment. Now, when you are doing a census, you have to understand that the quality of the data is going to be variable because there will be fear in the system. The purpose of a census assessment, the way the Gujarat government did it, is to bring everybody's focus on learning outcomes. Otherwise, you get caught up in this school doesn't have a toilet, this school doesn't have a roster, this school doesn't have a blackboard. So that's a great example of doing census assessment. Let's call it a loose census. Just like your blood test, I just need a drop and not the entire 5 liters. A sample assessment is good enough to know the health of a system. It could be a block, a district, a state, or in the case of PISA, a country, right? So you can, with a sample, you can run a much more tight process. You can have invigilation, you can be more assured of the quality of the data, and it's representative of the sample of the population that you've tested. So I think there's a case for loose census, there's a case for tight sample.
Yeah.
A tight census is borderline impossible logistically, and a loose sample is useless. Yes. So those are the 2 strategies I would use. Now, what can technology do at scale is actually improve the quality of your implementation. So let's say for foundational literacy and numeracy, for a long time, the only way that you could test grade 1 and 2 students was to send a very highly skilled evaluator who's also very good with children.
Yes.
Because you meet a first standard student, 6 years old, you gotta calm the kid down, you gotta create a fear-free environment, you gotta sort of do so much stuff to set up, and then you have to do a one-on-one testing. Yes. And for this, you have to be a very good evaluator. And that's expensive and in short supply. So you couldn't do it at scale. Yeah. But now what we've done is we've built a digital FLN assessment where it's actually allowing the child to do it on a tablet, where I'm recording the video, the audio, I'm going at a child's pace, I'm giving practice cases. And now that's the quality of the evaluator can be just someone who's good with kids, which is available in larger supply in India. And the evaluation, the manual evaluation can be done by a central team sitting in the office. They don't have to be on the field. So my efficiency is about a 4:1 compared to the manual testing. So what technology does is it allows you to go more remote, it allows you to do more students, it allows you to do it more efficiently, and it gives you richer data. Previously, the evaluator would be forced to put them in boxes. Is the child at a letter level, word level, sentence level, or paragraph level? But now I can get the child's full reading and sort of come up with nuances, like the child is struggling with what we call a Sanyukt Akshar, like a pyar, or like a Chandrama Bindu. And I can statistically tell you that E ki matra is more than U ki matra, for example. And that's the level of richness of data that goes up when you deploy technology.
I'm learning a lot right now, and I hope I can take these learnings back to the work I do. So would it be fair to say that, the flavor of assessments is now sort of affecting the teaching learning practices and thereby enhancing the learning outcomes for our students?
I would certainly hope so. That's the role of assessment. If we're not doing that, we're doing a disservice to all the assessments. Now, absolutely, the assessments need to have this feedback loop with the teachers. And the way I see it is, how do you support teachers better? Yeah. Let's say a child got malaria. Like, we don't ostracize it. Oh, such a bad child, how did he get malaria? Oh my God, keep him away. We actually give him love, support, nutrition, care, medicine. And I think that's the way we've got to look at teachers who are struggling to teach. We can't say, oh, such a bad teacher. We got to give them love. We got to give them the necessary research on how they can teach a topic better. We got to give them the encouragement. We got to create avenues where they can ask questions. We got to give them data on what their children's learning are so that they become 30% better. Yeah. It's not like every teacher has to be like the best teacher we had in our school. All we need is every teacher to be 1% better tomorrow than they were today. And that is because of the support the system gives. I have a lean frame. If you ask me to lift 200 kilos, I can't do it. You can motivate me, I can't do it. You can incentivize me, I can't do it. You can threaten me with my employment, I can't do it. I cannot lift 200 kilos, period. But if you give me a fulcrum, if you give me a machine, I can lift the 200 kilos. And that's the way I see the role of the teacher. We can't keep incentivizing or disincentivizing or threatening or punishing or cajoling or motivating them to lift 200 kilos. We got to give them the tools to be able to do that.
That's wonderfully put. Pranav, I think there's a lot of excitement, at least between the two of us, about all of this.
Yes.
But if I can ask you, is this affordable? Is this doable at a large scale in the government schools, in the low-income private schools? Is PAL something that is affordable for all children in India?
So let's sort of talk economics of school education, right? So on average, the government is spending today between 15,000 to 25,000 rupees per child per year. This is depending on states and depending on density and so on and so forth. So let's take an average of 20,000 rupees. This is including the cost of teachers, the cost of materials, supplies, uniforms, everything. This is what your and my tax money is already sort of allocated for. Affordable private schools again have a big range from about 5,000 to let's say 20,000 rupees, and so the numbers that we're talking about is in that zip code, right? Now let's talk about what does it cost to provide a child every day for one period access to a high quality learning software. Easy? Like the midday meal is a great analogy. Every child gets a hot midday meal every single day. Similarly, can every child get access to a high-quality learning software with a one-on-one device for one period per day?
Perfect.
What if I were to tell you that it's cheaper than the midday meal?
Brilliant. Let's do it.
So let's understand how. A tablet is about, give or take, 10,000 rupees and would last you for about 3 years. All inclusive, that's about 3,200, 3,600 per child, per tablet per year, right? Now this tablet will be used in, illustratively, period number 1 for first grade, period number 2 for second grade, period number 8 for 8th grade. So you take the 3,200 divided by 8, you get to 400 rupees per child. So access to a device, 1:1 for one period per day in the school time as part of the school curriculum is 400 rupees per day. Access to a high quality learning software like Mindspark could range depending on volumes, but can be as low as 500 rupees for a child. You throw in some extra money for maintenance, for training, for invigilation. You put in all that together at another 300. For about 1,200 rupees per child per year, you can access high quality learning software, which JPAL has sort of shown that enhances student learning outcomes by 300%. So bear with all the numbers. The 1,200 rupees is, by the way, only 5 rupees a day.
Yeah.
Right? The 1,200 rupees is also only about 6% of the 20,000 rupee number. If a 6% shift in investment can give you a 300% increase in learning, would you do it? That sounds like good return on investment, right? So I think this is highly affordable. In fact, if you look at the budgets today, I'm sure there will be 10 to 15% wastage, where the bottom efficacy of spend is so low that you're basically burning money. You'd replace that with this, and you would sort of see quality of learning go up. Which is why I don't think India needs to spend more percentage of GDP on education. It just needs to spend it differently. Or as Professor Mulidaran would say, you don't want to put more diesel in an old ambassador car. You want to change the engine first, right? So I think personalized adaptive learning software that is proven to work at large scale is very affordable, cheaper than a midday meal scheme. Can be done at scale. All you need is the tablets, which you can buy from any of these big providers. Anyways, Jio and Airtel are doing a great job of providing an increasing 4G coverage. By the way, we have also made it to work offline on a Raspberry Pi server without internet, without electricity, through a power bank. That's it. All you need is a tablet and the learning software. And then you leverage the existing human resources, which means the maths teacher, the Hindi teacher, the science teacher. You leverage the peon, the IT guy, the principals. You leverage the existing fact that students come to school almost every day. As opposed to doing 8 periods a day on Blackboard, they do 7 on Blackboard and 1 on the tablet, right? As opposed to doing, in a week, 6 periods of Hindi on the Blackboard, they do 3 on the Blackboard and 3 on the tablet. And if we did this, and we've done this for more than 500 schools, we're seeing that learning has tripled. There are also side benefits. Attendance has gone up dramatically because students now look forward to this happening every day. Enrollment has gone up, and this is what principals see. A government school principal is measured on only 2 things: enrollment and 10 standard pass percentage. This very nicely dovetails with his agenda. A teacher, most teachers genuinely care that each student learn, this fits into their agenda. Because suddenly the child was very quiet, the child was very irregular, the child who they claim their parents were not supporting are all getting supported by this. So not only is this affordable, it also fits into the agendas of the principal, the teacher, and the parent. And ultimately, of course, the child is learning, and that's what I deeply care about.
Yeah. You called out multiple stakeholders right now, right? And that made me think, if we think of a collaborative where there's government, there's EI, there's an NGO like Kotak Education Foundation, all of them working together for something at such a large scale. Could you talk a little bit more about EI's experience of, running, being a part of maybe such a collaborative or working with the government? What works? What are the challenges? What are the benefits of doing something of this sort?
Yeah, there are two things I love. I love economics, so I will talk about comparative advantage. I don't think EI should do everything. EI should really focus on building a high-quality learning software and assessments, and that's all it should do. Everything else, someone can do it better than us, right? I have had a very partnerships-first approach. The partnership with KEF, Kotak Education Foundation, is an example of that, where you were already in the schools before. You already had a rapport with the principals. You already had the permissions. You had already purchased some tablets. Why should I reinvent the wheel when you've already done that? You are better at what you do on the ground. I am sort of, provider to turbocharge the learning outcomes of what you were doing. Similar, we actually won a grant for a development impact bond in Lucknow. This is part of the UBS, MSDF. And I said, hey, who can do this better than us? And we basically spoke to multiple nonprofits. We finally went with Pratham Infotech Foundation, actually deployed this on the ground in Lucknow. I gave away 2/3 of my grant because they genuinely deserve that. They had a presence there, they had a connect with the government, they had a local office, they had a field mobilized. Why should I reinvent the wheel? And all partnerships go through a honeymoon phase, an almost divorce phase before they stabilize. And I think that's the hard part, that are you willing to share credit? Are you willing to share revenue? Are you willing to share ego, if
yes.
I can say that?
Yeah.
And I think in these partnerships, it's just helpful to stay the course and just remind yourself, why should you do it if someone can do it better than you? Of course, the government is going to be a very important partner in this, right? First and foremost, the money. All the corporate CSR and international aid in education put together in India is about 6,000 to 8,000 crores per year. The government spends 6 lakh crores a year on education. So we're talking about 1% philanthropy, 99% government share. So the 1% philanthropy should influence how to do it. The 99% should actually do it. And I think the government is an important stakeholder here. I think to their credit, we have been very supported by them through the permissions by the SCRT, through utilizing the hardware they'd already purchased, through trainings at the Diet. And I think that makes sense because you want to plug into existing line items. I think what the government can do more is have a more intentional policy on how technology can improve education, which has been missing and which is what we're encouraging them to do. But the government comes with the money, the scale, the captive audience. Nonprofits come with the ability to talent, to influence what is being trained, to sort of do blueprints of how it can be replicated. I think what EI and others do is, focus on the R&D behind the pedagogy underneath the technology. And I think that sort of beautifully fits together. We're doing one more experiment in South Africa, about 50 schools in one of the poorest regions. We have about 6 of us together. Someone's doing monitoring, someone's doing project management, someone's put the hardware, someone's put the software, us, someone's done the government part, and someone's doing teacher training. There are like 6 different organizations together. It's a bit of a khichdi, but again, each organization sort of has specialized in what they do really well, and that's why they have a seat at the table.
All the best for that. Takes a village to teach the children, I suppose.
Yeah, more than that. It takes a village just to raise a child. It takes more than that to educate the child.
You spoke about something which is, I think, dear and, something which is concerning for everyone in India, the 10th standard exams, the boards, for the students, for the parents, for the teachers, for the schools, everything. And with the new education policy, maybe the grade will change. But what would you say is your hope for the questioning quality you know, for at the board's level. It's the most important milestone in a child's education. But what is your hope for that, milestone?
Yeah, the 10th standard is an important milestone. It ends up being a minimum qualifying criteria for many jobs. It also, historical reasons, signifies a milestone that a child should be crossed. The child should cross before they think about other things. So the 10th standard board exam is very important. Now, it's unfortunate in India that the questions in the board exam are very much from the textbook and are looking for answers also from the textbook. The motivation on this is not bad. The idea was that, can you provide something to a child where if they have the textbook, they can pass the board exam, right? And they didn't want people to be burdened with extra tuition or things outside of the textbook. So the motivation per se is not bad, but the test is so rote-based that it only checks whether you remember who killed whom, when did they kill it, at what location, or it checks for standard definitions of photosynthesis, or it checks for triangle ABC is congruent to PQR and you don't want to change the letters, kind of a thing. And what that's happening is all the energy in the ecosystem. See, the good news in India is India takes education very seriously, right? Parents are very concerned. They put children in multiple after-school things. Schools spend an enormous amount of money in recruiting teachers and delivering this. The child is actually spending many, many hours studying. Now, all of this energy is just channelized towards memorizing. And that's not a skill that we need in the 21st century. Now, think about if the board exam was like PISA or ACIT, which check for understanding. You would have this entire energy suddenly shifting towards understanding. And by the way, this can happen at no cost. It's the same amount of money to print the paper, take the paper back, scan the paper, grade the paper, everything. So at virtually zero cost, you can actually shift India's education system from memorizing without understanding to sort of learning with understanding. And that would be the best preparation for a $5 trillion or a $20 trillion economy, for us being relevant in the 21st century, and so on and so forth. Now, let's take examples, right? So imagine, Abhijat, who were the parents of Mussolini?
Sorry, no idea.
What was the weight of the pituitary gland?
Feeling grilled right now, but no idea.
You just lost 2 marks on the board exam, right? But if I were to ask you to explain democracy or fascism, you might be able to do that better. If I asked you the function of the pituitary gland, at least that's a more relevant information. And I think in the age of AI and ChatGPT, we might even need collaborative problem solving, creativity, and things of that nature to get there. So we got to test those things. Because see, the moment you put it in the test, everything else will follow. A lot of people ask us, hey, if you change the board exam, what are you doing about teacher training? But I'm saying, you cannot train teachers to do something that the board exam will not ask. Because the tendency, it's natural, not just for Indians, but globally, for everyone to maximize marks on a high-stakes exam. That's natural. Maximizing marks for a good exam is not a bad thing, which is why you see the Koreas and the Finlands and the Singapores of the world sort of doing what they're doing, right? They're basically maximizing marks on a really good test. Because that is the center of gravity towards what everyone's doing. And it's not just, you see the ripple effect, right? The 10th standard board exam is a certain way. What does the 9th standard teacher do? It's like, next year board exam mein ye aayega, isliye aise padho. And then the 8th standard, and the 7th standard, and all the way the ripple effect. So the moment you change this end, you will see a ripple effect all the way down to grade 1, where the emphasis will shift away from 20, recite A to Z, to understanding is 9 bigger or 7, right? And that's sort of the power of the board exams. And I think so our work with the CBSE, with the multiple states, is over a period of 5 years, can half of the board exam be like world-class standards that are there? And we're working with the test makers, with the teachers, with the systems to be able to do this. But I'm quite excited about this. I think it's one of those things which costs nothing, but can have a tremendous impact on improving the quality of education. By the way, there was a research study done which compared board exams of India, Pakistan, Uganda, Kenya, and Canada, and it found that the Indian were even worse than the African ones. We were at the bottom of the table. Worth looking into that, where they ranked questions based on ability to understand. So I think we have a lot of work to do, but if we do this, I think our ranking on PISA will also improve in the next decade or so.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So if I had to ask you, what is your one hope for the children of India in terms of education?
I hope they become good citizens, good human beings. I think that is going to be most important, that we have children who have values that we would like our children to have, who remain safe and keep others safe, and who solves the most urgent and important problems of today, which could be on climate change, which could be on societal prejudices, which could be on water, air. I think that's what this generation should solve, which ours created. I think first and foremost, if they are good human beings, good citizens, and solve the most important problems of tomorrow, I think that's my request to them. Yes.
And if you had to use this platform to make sort of a call to action to all the entities, stakeholders, influencers who play an important role in the education system in India, what would that be? Because you just called out what is beautiful for our children, but like you said, it can't be only EI doing it, it can't be only KEF doing it. So what's a call to action you would put out there for anyone who's passionate about education?
Interesting. First and foremost, let's agree and define a problem that we want to solve so that we all row in the same direction. I would largely say learning with understanding, to be a good citizen, to solve the most important problems, but happy to iterate on this. So I think that's setting a goal is important for any partnership. Yeah. I think removing anchors. See, we are all victims of our past successes, right? I believe a lot in EdTech because I've seen success. So how do we unanchor ourselves from that, unhook ourselves from that? Because unless we do that, we won't think differently about the future. And that's tough exercise, for me, for you, for all of us. And I think that would be like, can we go through exercises where we are willing to start with the whiteboard? Third is think very deeply about where resources are going, right? I asked the government to change the bottom 10% of their spend, but there's a chance that my bottom 10% of time and money is also not spent on the most important problem. And sort of can we, then rechannelize it to that one goal that we are setting. And finally, like, what is it that only you can be the best in the world at? Borrowing from the Ikigai framework, like what can you be in the best in the world? How does it solve an important problem? How does it sort of keep your house running? Yeah. And where do you sort of see purpose and impact? I think that's a useful exercise to do so that we are not carried away by our current roles and titles and organization missions and things of that nature, which is the normal human thing to do. Yeah.
Well, on that Ikigai note, thank you so much, Pranav, for all your time today. Lovely to have picked your brains on so many things, and always a pleasure to talk to you about education.
Thank you, Abhijat. I think it was a very interesting conversation and spanning assessments, technology, what teachers can do, and how the board exams can be an important magnet for improving education. So thanks for your time, and thanks to KEF Kaarvaan for hosting this podcast.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Abhijat.